Come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. Never have to cut you out like right now. You see, I don't have to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try the marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they feel strange. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and the color on your lip.
Welcome to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast, powered by Blue Wire. Shout out to the new company. My name is Michael-Shawn and You guys can follow me on whatever Elon Musk is calling that app these days. My @name has not changed. At Mike Dugar. That is MikeDugar. Shout out to everyone who is either watching or listening via our YouTube channel. Seahawks Man to Man is the name of the channel. That's Seahawks Man, the number 2 man. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, even if you are someone that consumes via our audio platforms. Either way, the gesture is appreciated and helps us a lot. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. Seahawks Man to Man is the name of the handle on IG and on TikTok. Seahawks Man to Man is the name of the handle there as well. Thank you in advance for both of those things. Chris, go ahead and talk to him.
What is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Christopher Kidd. You can follow me on Twitter at CKIDD206, and that is CKID206. And we are back. Week 6 loss. One big thing, Mike and I scour the film, and we come to a conclusion on, damn, what stood out to us, or what was the one big thing from that game that caught our attention? And Mike, did you want to go first, or should I go ahead and take a stab at it?
Let's see. Is yours positive or negative? Mine's got both in it. So
I'm the same way. It's both. I'm critiquing. I'll go first since we're already at it. So okay. This week, one big thing for me would be DK Metcalf. And Mike talked a lot about it on our last episode, Seahawks Man to Man, the post-game show, where DK, he had some opportunities to make plays, and he just didn't. Catching the football, not getting the feet down, aggressive catching, not coming back to the football. And that's watching the film. I was like, damn, he left a lot of meat on the bone, as you could say, in that regard. He had 11 targets. Now, a couple of them weren't the best pass. There was one where the ball sailed out of bounds. He ran a corner, and he just sailed it. It happens sometimes, and you move on from that. But there were also a couple of plays, at least 3, where, man, DK, you have to catch the football. No excuses. You just have to make the play. I know sometimes it can be difficult because a defender is right on you, and maybe, just maybe, he gets his hand in where you think the ball is going to go. He might deflect it, and you're anticipating the pass being batted down, popping into the air, and maybe the defender misses, and the ball hits both your hands. You still have to find a way to catch it. Those are things that, that's a very tough catch to make, but DK is more than capable of doing, and I think that's exactly what happened on a pass that went to him incomplete in the first quarter with about 2 minutes remaining. The Niners are showing 2 safeties high, and Geno throws it away from the DB. I believe it's cover 2, and the DB is basically just taking away everything inside, and it's a curl route. And Geno actually throws it to the right towards the sideline, and DK gets both hands on it, but he doesn't come down with it. It's, in my eyes, it's a drop. Now, I know Mike and I had debates off wax about what's a drop, what's not a drop, what's a pass defense, but I strongly believe that DK should have caught that. And yeah, it's nitpicky because it's a play that I think every chance DK gets, he's going to make that play. It was 2nd and 10. Well, that drop makes it now 3rd and 10. So it's the little details. And I liked how Geno placed it. It was a great placement away from the defender. Defender had inside shade on this zone coverage, and Geno fires it outside. DK gets both hands on it, and he just drops it, takes his mouthpiece out, and is like, damn, yeah, you got to catch that. And in that instance, that could have been a momentum play there. It wasn't because he dropped it, but it is what it is, right? You have to move on from that. He had another opportunity to make a play, and I will give Geno. I will say the throw was a little off target from Geno, but I gotta say, DK 9 times out of 10 is probably going to make the catch just because of how talented he is. And yeah, the play was a in route, and Geno throws it a little higher and further up the field. But I thought DK had a chance there, and this is the defender is all over him, right? DK is 6'4", 230. He's stronger and bigger than anybody on the field. This is a play that, damn, do you really want to say, hey, DK, I still need you to make it? Unfortunately, yeah, I'll be the guy that says, yes, Geno, yes, DK, we still need you to make the play. Especially in this scenario, if I'm not mistaken, that's a 3rd and 10. So if you don't make this play, you got to go ahead and punt. And he doesn't. And yeah, it's just one of those. And actually, my apologies, it was a curl route. So it's a curl route. Geno throws it under duress, by the way. He throws him open, if I'm being correct here. It's definitely an off-target throw, but he throws him open. The defender, I believe, is number 22, Isaac Yiadom, is blanketed all over him. Should it have been a flag? Sure. But DK gets both hands on it. He's trying to shield himself from being hit because he has I believe, a linebacker coming at him, and he has a safety that's dropping down as well. Another opportunity where DK, you get both hands on the football, you got to be able to make the play. And I know he's looking at the refs after the play wondering, are y'all not seeing this? These guys are draped all over me. But you want to be an all-pro number 1, number 2 receiver in the league, those are the plays you're just going to have to make and keep the chains moving, keep the offense on the field, give your guys another chance at a set of downs. And he didn't do it on that play. And then my final one was the one that Mike and I actually talked about on the postgame show last week, where Geno underthrows the football quite a bit. This ball is delivered just shy, but DK again has an opportunity to make the play, and he doesn't, partially because he is waiting on the football. In this scenario, I would say, hey, DK, I need you to attack the football. There's this famous catch. I don't know, maybe it's not famous, but there's this amazing catch by Julio Jones. The ball, it's a fade route to him, and it's thrown just a little low. It doesn't matter. Julio jumps over the DB and just rips it away from him for a touchdown. DK is more than capable of doing that. And on that play, that's what I'm kind of expecting from DK. There's about 40 seconds left in the second quarter, going towards halftime, 2nd and 10. And the route that he runs is a slant go. We've seen it before. I think it was 2 weeks ago, Mike, that he ran a slug go for a touchdown. Who was it against? I'm drawing a blank on who it was. But
it's the same play as the touchdown against the Dolphins, yeah.
Thank you. There we go. Where the safety bites up, and it happens again. It happens again. DK is coming in hard, like he's breaking for a slant, hits right at the numbers and breaks straight up field. The ball is definitely underthrown. I understand that. And instead of DK going up and high pointing it with both hands, he is allowing it to come to him, waiting on it, which the DB gets in front of him. Maybe it's deflected, takes off the timing, and DK just hits him in his chest, bounces off. It's an incomplete pass. DK, go up with both hands and snatch that joint. You snatch it, you probably score, for being honest. DK he catches it and he gets moving north and south very quickly, and he's a monster to bring down. So those are just 3 instances. When I looked at his totality of 11 targets, those were 3 that I'm sure he wants back. And I didn't even mention the 4th one, which we talked about last week on the post game, about him trying to body catch a fade ball to the left corner of the end zone where Geno throws it up high. And instead of high pointing it with both hands, trying to get your toes down, he attempts to body catch it, and then gets shoved out of bounds. Now you end up having to settle for 3 instead of going forward, or could have been a touchdown in that scenario. So those are just 3 things out of those 11 targets. Could those 3 have been catches? Absolutely. So instead of 3 catches, that's 6 catches. So that's not bad. 11 targets, and you get 6 catches. That's a solid day. And then obviously there's a couple overthrows, misfires that Geno would, I'm sure, want back. But looking back at it, I thought, okay, those 11 targets were solid. I'm not too upset with forcing the ball to DK because those are opportunities that the Seahawks needed badly. These were in his hands. making plays, and they just didn't go his way. And I'm sure going into the matchup with Atlanta, if he gets targeted again, I would guarantee he's probably around 6, 7, 8 catches, just because I think the focus will be there, and I'm confident that he's able to bounce back from the performance he had against the Niners.
Yeah, I think with DK, it's not even so much about yeah, and I mean it is about the focus and catching the ball, but I think it's in the context of how much volume he's going to get. Like he's going to get the ball every game, you know, and there's got to be efficiency there if you're going to have be a high volume guy. Now, to his credit, DK is often double teamed and covered by the number one guy, so they're not going to be but so efficient there. You look at the most efficient receivers in the league, and it's guys who catch like either passes very close to the line of scrimmage or dudes that don't get a lot of targets but catch like a bunch of deep balls or something. You know, like with my man from the Saints right now, Shaheed or whatever.
Shaheed,
Yeah, like that dude. I think actually, I mean, I don't know his stats in front of me, but like it's guys like that. You know, guys who just catch like a few passes, but they're big ones. So their reception totals are high, or their reception rates. DK's reception rate is pretty low. It's in the high 50s. Again, for the second year in a row, he just can't be in the 50s. And that's a him thing. That's a Geno thing. That's a OC play design thing because he's gonna lead the team in target share almost every year. So when you do that, you got to be efficient. Like you just can't afford any mistakes where a ball hits your hands. You just can't. And you got to catch some that you probably shouldn't catch too, because that just goes with the territory. I don't even necessarily pin the the contract thing on him. Like, oh, you got to catch a number of balls because of your contract, or even like what he may want in a future contract. It's a pure volume thing for me because they can't stop throwing it to him. Like, be some teams like, oh, okay, well, you're not catching it, so or your targets to you aren't efficient, so we'll just stop. You can't. That's just not an option with DK. He's gonna lead the team in targets probably, or have the highest target share. He's gonna get a lot per game. He's gonna be a focal point of a lot of reads. So everything with him has to be efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. Like they got to be on the same page. Any ball that gets near him, he's got to catch because of how tough it is to get clean looks to him because of the coverage he gets, especially when he's covered against number one guys. As he's been, this was the only game where he kind of wasn't shadowed by number one dude. I'm gonna put some of these numbers in perspective. I wrote about these too on The Athletic. I did this not knowing that would be Chris's one big thing, by the way. But so beyond the second interception that Geno threw, which Mike McDonald kind of basically threw DK under the bus there, let's ignore that one for a second because that is one of the 11 targets. Just on the season, though, DK's EPA per target, which is like basically a nerdy way of saying how valuable your targets are, which I do think is important when you talk about a superstar-ish receiver, because a target for a touchdown in a blowout, for instance, is not as valuable as a target to you that goes for a pick six with the game on the line. You know what I'm saying? Like there in the fourth quarter, you know, I think that we can quantify some targets mean more than others. For instance, like Chris said, the one in the end zone, well, that's a fade ball that it was on third down. So he had to settle for 3 instead of getting 7, 4-point swing. It's a very valuable target there versus the hitch route you're talking about was like 2nd and 10, first quarter. The score was 0-0. Not as valuable of a drop, but they're both targets that don't go his way, but one of them far more meaningful, right? So DK's EPA per target, the number itself isn't important, but he's in the bottom third of like the guys who get a lot of targets. He's got to be in the front half. I don't even think he's got to be at the top of the league because, again, the top of the league is dudes who don't catch a lot of like it's low volume, safer throw guys. DK is a deep ball guy. Like he's never going to be number one. Like even Tyreek on a good year is not going to be like in the top 10. But 57%, got to be higher than that. Got to be in the front half of the league in your EPA per target. Like those things, I feel like are important because, like, what are you gonna do? Stop throwing a DK Metcalf? No, that's dumb. You just can't do that. So I'm glad you chose that as one big thing because it's the efficiency of it. He can't have 11 targets and 3 catches.
Yeah,
you just can't.
Yeah.
Whether that's his fault, Geno fault, Grubb fault, DB's playing great, whatever it is, you just can't. You'll lose. You'll lose most games that way and you'll leave points on the board most often. And it sucks that one of his cleanest targets and catches was the one that got called back. That was unfortunate. It's the same play as the touchdown from the Dolphins as well. They ran that like 4 times, and it literally never worked. Actually, it sucks. Not all. No, for real, it really didn't. It actually segues into my one big thing. Let's do this. My one big thing is Ryan Grubb, just him as the offensive coordinator, for 4 reasons, I think, and I'll go through each one and make them kind of quick. But choosing Grubb largely for 4 reasons. Ryan Grubb, for one, I don't like how he's been calling the games for like the past 6 weeks. Although I think week 6 was better than week 5 was. Week 5 was atrocious. Reason number 2, Seattle's run game really kind of doesn't have an identity, which is bad. That's a huge problem. Whereas, like, by comparison, Chris, remember in 2021 where Rashad Penny was basically Barry Sanders for like a month? Like, in that, they had a very clear identity. It wasn't just that Rashad figured out how to run the football. It was like, oh, they realized no one can stop us on like some of this mid-zone, outside zone stuff, and we're just going to run it till they stop us, and no one could stop us. And Rashad ended up being great. Like, it was just a clear plan of attack and being executed. Everyone was on the same page with that. They don't have that right now. You can see what Grubb's kind of trying to do. He's really trying to attack between the tackles, and it's just not working at all. Reason number 3, Grubb's a new guy on the staff, and most of the offensive players are returning dudes. You know, that he inherited them, which is like good and bad, because I think that he might have to make, Chris, some tough personnel decisions with the offense. Like, in a perfect world, football works where like the best players play the most snaps, right? But we know that's not how it goes. There's draft where a guy was drafted matters. How much a guy is being paid matters. Whether it's supposed to matter or not, it does. It's the NFL, it's the reality. But I feel like he might have to make a tough call here, because I don't think the blocking is consistent enough when they're in 11 personnel to be committed to that personnel grouping as often as they are. And you could see him seeing that a little bit in week 6. Like, they ran I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it felt like, just watching the game, oh, okay, Grubb kind of sees that. Let's use more 12 personnel. And I say the tough decisions part because I think this goes into my 4th reason. I'm not sure that 87 is their best tight end for what they need to be right now. Like, I think Noah's fine, but like I think what they want to be is, and this kind of goes with Jackson as well. You look at some of the blocking that's going on, and when I look at the film, I'm like, yo, they really should just be leaning on like AJ and Pharaoh a little bit more when I'm watching, like specifically in the blocking stuff.
No, yeah, exactly.
But I feel like that goes to the passing too, because it's not like they're asking the tight ends to get really jiggy down the field. Like, you look at what a lot of Noah's targets, they're either screens or they're just like little stop routes, you know, right next to the linebacker, and he just gets tackled either way. You know, they're not asking him to be Jimmy Graham, you know, or Travis Kelce. It really is just like, hey, run 8 yards, turn around, ball will be there. I don't think that requires much. I don't think you're sacrificing much in the passing game. If you're like, you know what, 88, you might need some more spin. 86, you might need some more spin. And then like some of Ken's runs that didn't go well on Thursday night were very clearly like, oh, our slot receiver didn't reach the nickel. So the nickel just gets right to Ken, or the nickel doesn't reach the safety. So the safety gets right to Ken in the box. That's not an O-line thing. That's a receiver thing. Sometimes it's been Tyler in the past. I saw a few where they were Jackson on Thursday. And that's why I'm bringing it back to Grubb, because I feel like this all goes into his role. He has a lot on his plate. And on teams where the head coach calls plays, it doesn't matter what side of the ball, whether he's the offensive coordinator like Shanahan or McVay, or he's the defensive coordinator like you have with McDonald. The other coordinator, I feel like, has an outsized portion of the scheme on his plate. You know what I mean? Like, Sean McVay just lets the DC do whatever. He's like, bro, I got this side, you got that side. You're basically the head coach of the defense. So that's kind of what Grubb is in Seattle. McDonald's like, I know offense, but that's your bag. Do your thing. Here's kind of how I want us to play. Go do it. Cool. I don't even disagree with framing it like that. The issue is they have so many problems, and it comes down to identity. And I think it comes down to some personnel stuff too. And the thing with blocking is, I'm not like a huge schemer in blocking. I don't think Chris, I don't think neither one of us are. It really feel like you either want to do that joint or you don't.
And the
Like,
one that you're talking about with JSN, he did not want to block, buddy.
Yeah, and there was 2 that
like
I saw. I think there was like 2 or 3 I peeped. And I'm not just totally isolating him. I think the receivers in general have been inconsistent, but I really feel like they kind of have to come out of this mini bye being like, yo, I don't care what you've done to this point. I'm putting the best players on the field. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care where you was drafted. I don't care how long you've been in the league. I'm putting the best dudes on the field, and whoever's going to be the doggiest of dogs on Sunday against Atlanta will play. I really think that's got to be whoever that turns out to be. I feel like it's got to be that, because right now in these losses, it just doesn't feel like they want to kick the other team's ass the way the other team is coming out wanting to kick theirs, particularly blocking. There's only so much you can do up front. I do think Grubb did a good job in their run game with trying to, like, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, Chris. The O-line is not good. So you kind of have to change who the point of attack is. Like, you can't just be like, all right, the lead blocker here is going to be Anthony Bradford. Probably a bad idea. Like, you can't be like, oh, okay, the lead blocker on this play that's going to spring Ken will be Stone Forsythe. That probably won't work with any consistency. We saw that on, like, Ken's third run. Nick Bosa just says, come here. Ken runs for 1 yard, right? Like, so I like how Grubb is kind of mixing it up. Like, okay, on this one, if Jackson reaches the nickel, boom, Ken's got 8 yards. Or if Charles reaches the backer, boom, we got 7 yards. Or if Connor Williams climbs to Fred Warner, we got 6 yards. Like, you have to mix it up, because right now, if you just consistently rely on your big boys up front and your tight end, particularly when you're in 11 personnel, which is their 3 receivers and Noah, I think he's got to scrap that. They really might have to be all right, we're going to go back to 2022 when we didn't have Jackson. We just had DK, Tyler, Will Dissly, and Noah, and we're just going to be a 12 personnel team, because that's where we're at our most physical. Remember how much 13 and 12 they were running with Shane Waldron?
That's all they did.
They ran it as much as pretty much every team in the league that wasn't the Ravens or the Titans. You know, they were a very heavy multiple tight end team. And I think until they're more physical at 11 personnel, that might be that might be the switch that Grubb has to flip, you know, or he just goes to the guys in 11 personnel and says, yo, if you guys want to catch passes, block your ass off. I feel like they know that already, but just reiterate it, because this is not happening. Because Chris, we talked a lot about on the last show. We talked about how they got to run the ball more. Like, Geno leads the league in dropbacks. Chris, he's on pace. Here's a stat for you. Geno Smith is averaging 46 dropbacks a game. Chris, since 2000, there have only been 2 quarterbacks to average more than 46 dropbacks per game for an entire season. That is Matthew Stafford in 2012. I think he was at 48. And Andrew Luck in 2015 was at 47. Even in that Andrew Luck season, he only played 7 games. So really, when we're talking about a full season, there's only one quarterback who's dropped back more often per game than Geno was on pace to do. He's on pace to throw for 5,000 yards, but he's on pace to drop back pretty much more than anyone this century. That is a problem. The reason that they're doing that is because they either can't or won't run that dang. So I feel like it goes back to, Chris, ironically, I think my one big thing after week 1 was that Ken Walker's got to be the guy. And it really comes right back to that. They have to be able to run the rock. It really has to be, that I don't care how good a pass catchers we all got right now. None of y'all are going to get the rock if we can't get it to Ken. It's got to be Ken first. Like, Pete Carroll probably watching the Seahawks on Thursday was like, wonder what the fix to this is. And looking at the run defense too. I've been thinking about how Pete probably feels about the Seahawks right now. Like, is he happy? Is he like, haha, that's what you guys get? Or is he like, feel bad for John? I don't know. I don't know.
You remember what he said at the end of the press conference when he was walking away from it all, and he said, you're going to learn, Johnny. You're going to get you.
Yeah, he was like, yo, you went the big chair, huh? Okay.
Here you go.
You'll see what come with the big chair. He also called out the owners of the team for basically not knowing ball, which is kind of funny. Which, I mean, the product looks the same, but we already talked about that last show. But yeah, I really think there's a lot on Grubb's plate here. It's not an easy fix. And I really think it's not even that they need new players, even new O-line. I think with the O-line they have, the 6 guys they're using, they're starting 5 in Christian Haynes, I feel like they can get this done. I just feel like it needs to be an identity shift or a mentality adjustment from everyone involved. That's him, Grubb, being more committed to it. That's Ken having the right vision. He basically just punted on a first down by just wanting to dance outside, had it right up the gap, bounced outside, lost a yard. Like, he's got to have the right vision. Guys got to not get their butts kicked on in the run game at every position. And we look at the run game, look at the O-line stinks, but it's the tight ends, it's the receivers, everyone, especially when they run it at 11 personnel and don't use a fullback. That means that your receivers have to block, particularly guys who line up near the line of scrimmage like Tyler, like Jackson. So I feel like Grubb's got to start there. And that's the season. The season's on the line. Chris, I don't know if you saw today, our athletic projection model has the Seahawks with a 21% chance of making the playoffs. 21. They're 0-3 in the NFC, and our model has them not being favored again until week 12 against Arizona, and then they'll be underdogs every other game. That could change with some injuries, but I feel like that's pretty accurate. Like the Seahawks are pretty flawed. The entire NFC North is good. At least 2 teams in the NFC South are good, and then at least 2 are competent in the NFC East in Washington and Philly. So like there's
one team.
Yeah, and so you got to play the entire NFC North, which is the best division in football. And then you've got a bunch of scrappy little wild card teams in the NFC. So unless you win the division, it's going to be very tough to make some noise. And so that looks like it's pretty shaky when you just got, it's kicked by the Niners. So yeah, I think there's a lot on Grubb. There's a lot on Mike McDonald too. But when I watched that game, just like you, the offense really jumped out, man. It was like, I feel like Grubb, it's easy to just say run the ball more, but I wanted to offer maybe more of the detail of how he could do it. And I feel like that's how. You got to find the thing that works. And I do think that running between the tackles is probably the best way to go. I don't think their current linemen are super athletic enough to run a bunch of like perimeter stuff. I don't think that's the way to go. I do think kind of just moving cats off the ball up front is the way to go. I'm with Grubb on that. But if you're going to do that, if that's going to be your identity, particularly with all these shotgun runs, then boy, you are going to need some dudes who just want to kick ass. And right now they have not had that through 6 weeks. And maybe that's some personnel changes. Maybe that's just cussing some dudes out. I don't know if that's Grubb bag, but yeah, man, you saw what I saw too. And Grubb's going to see it, man. When Grubb really sit back this weekend and was looking, even Mike McDonald, I feel like they got to come into that Monday meeting and be like, yo, let's just arm wrestle. Everybody, let's fight to the death. Somebody like do something physical as their competition thing to fire them up. Because that's what they need right now. I know they played 3 games in 11 days. Maybe guys who just didn't have the physicality in that short stretch. But that's what it's got to be, man. Grubb's got to get that out of his guys. Yes, run the ball more, but run it better. And a lot of that is is not just Geno or Ken. Like that's the other 9 guys on the field. And right now they're just not getting it done. So good luck, Ryan Grubb. Good luck, brother. You figured out the screen thing. Good for you. But outside of that, you got to get this run game right. And you might have to have some tough conversations with some guys who are either highly drafted or highly paid, or veteran or whatever. It's got to be a real meritocracy. Whoever is the biggest dog during the week should play. And it should be as simple as that. No ifs, ands, or buts. Everything you did in the last part of your career, the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks, don't matter. Who's the biggest dog heading into Atlanta? Got to play those dudes. And if they do that, I'm almost certain they'll win the game.
Well, speaking of Atlanta, let's go to the Dirty South, catch up with Josh Kendall, who covers the Atlanta Falcons for The Athletic. Get some insight on what they got going. Could this be a breakout game for Bijan Robinson?
They ran for 200 yards on the Panthers, I think, on Sunday.
Woo. Can he match that? Can he top that? We'll chat with Josh next and get a little bit of insight on what Kirk Cousins is doing pretty well. I don't imagine the Seahawks try to blitz that man because he's been lighting it up a little bit. But without further ado, here's Josh Kendall. Man, I just stole Mike's Up Further Ado. I got to come up with something different. Coming up next, we have Josh Kendall of The Athletic.
All right. Without further ado, joining us on the program is the homie talking to us from Atlanta, covers the Falcons for The Athletic, does a great job. Josh Kendall is rejoining the program. Josh, what up, man? Welcome back to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Last time I think I was actually in Seattle, and it was a great day here. It was actually a great day here, although I do kind of miss the Seattle area.
That's right. The Falcons had played a West Coast game and stayed up at University of Washington, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, they got to meet the dog, so I was pretty happy about that. And I now follow the dog on Twitter. That's kind of nice. I like the dog.
Yeah, that was a somewhat memorable game up here. In that a lot of people's jobs were in question after the Falcons came up here and got busy with Mariota and Cordell Patterson, ran all over them. It did not go well in
Yeah,
Seattle.
that crew may have cost several folks their jobs. I mean, I should go back and look at the teams that they beat and see how many of those people, coordinators and head coaches, are still employed.
Yeah, probably not many. So we're gonna dive into different elements of Seahawks Falcons, a matchup I actually enjoy a little bit more that I researched and watched some film on it. But big picture here on the Falcons for a second, they seem to fall in a bucket of their fan base perhaps maybe falls in a bucket of fans that because of history, both recent and further back, just feel like they can't have nice things. There's just like, oh, we're winning games, but are we good? I feel like the Browns tend to fall into that. The Lions before the last year maybe fall into that. Whenever the Jets start winning, they'll fall into that. And then the Falcons, Raiders too, but yes, Falcons in that. It's like, we're 4-2, but are we actually good? So I toss this to you, Josh. Are the Falcons at 4-2 actually good?
I don't know the answer to that question either. I actually posed that in our power rankings today. They're 4-2. They're in a good spot in the NFC South because they've just reeled off 3 straight wins against division opponents. They're undefeated in the NFC, if I'm right. So, they're setting themselves up with those sort of, putting those chips in their pocket with tiebreakers, etc. But they've been doing it, except for the Panthers game, just by the skin of their teeth. This team could easily, be a 1-win or a 2-win team. And you're right that Falcons fans are sort of consistently waiting for the bottom to drop out. It's not just a 28-3 thing. It goes back further than that. I mean, this team's been playing football since the mid '60s in what has become one of the nation's biggest cities, biggest media markets, and has managed, despite that, to be, fairly anonymous. When you're the random NFL fan is thinking, naming NFL football teams, how long before they remember, oh yeah, the Falcons. That's remarkable for a team that's in Atlanta, and all the eyes that are on Atlanta. So you pegged it exactly. Falcons fans are happy to be leading the NFC South. They are happy to have 4 wins. They love them some Kirk Cousins right now, but they are not sure.
Yeah, it does feel like a loss to Seattle. I think even Kirk might have said it, like you lose, and then everyone's like, "Ah, damn, here we go, here we go again."
That's the life you lead, and I, the Falcons are favorites, but that is very tenuous. I mean, this is not a great matchup for them.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. Just you are correct. The Falcons have won all 4 of their NFC games. Their only 2 losses are to the Steelers and the Chiefs. Obviously, in the AFC, they're like the reverse Seahawks in that way. The Seahawks are 3-0 in the AFC with wins over the Broncos, Patriots, and I'm missing it. Oh, Dolphins, and then they have 3 straight losses to the NFC and 0-1 in the division. So these teams are a little opposite here. Let's talk about that quarterback. Kirk Cousins, otherwise known as Kirk O'Chains, actually playing really well statistically and on tape, as you've seen, I'm sure. 8th in EPA per dropback, doesn't take a lot of sacks. When he gets pressured, those don't turn into sacks. He's been really efficient. He's really only had a couple not good games. Saints, I don't think they found those end zone on offense. And then that opener where everyone thought, and myself included, he could not move against the Steelers. What have you seen from Kirko in 6 games?
Well, they brought him here. They signed him to a deal that a lot of people thought was a little pricey, but you just got to pay for quarterbacks these days. They brought him here to sort of tie together all of these investments that they have been making in the offense. 3 straight top 10 picks, an offensive line that's full of first rounders, homegrown guys. They really felt like that their personnel offensively was top tier in the NFL. And if they had a quarterback who could tie it all together, they could be on to something. They thought that the personnel was good enough. Rewinding the clock a little bit, they thought that personnel was good enough that they could make it work with Marcus Mariota and maybe make it work with Desmond Ridder. Those 2 experiments failed. So they're like, okay, fine. We'll pay for the quarterback. After week 1, everybody thought, well, whatever. But they have slowly gotten better, and Kirk has paid off on that plan through 6 games. It's a long season, but Drake London is playing really well. We've seen Kyle Pitts, despite a couple of valleys, get more involved in the action. The run game chipped in last week. So it is coming together. What they thought would happen right now is happening. It's as Kirk mentioned, a week-to-week league. But he's been really good for this team.
Yeah, and he's we're recording on Tuesday. This is the day that the Jets news with Devontae Adams has broken. So I feel like this is a timely parallel. The Jets, I think, have had the ball with a chance to win in their last 3 games and come up short, whereas the Falcons, when Kirk has the ball with a chance to go win, has delivered. Both teams kind of brought the veteran in to be that margin of error, bridger. And Kirk has done that. One more thing on Kirk, because it's a little bit my fault here in Seattle. I talk a lot about the team, and they've lost 3 games, and I've just been super doom and gloom because they've been bad on offense. They've been bad on defense.
Right.
They've lost games. They lost a couple of games in prime time. So I'm going to try to give the Seahawks fans some hope through you. So for Seahawks fans hoping for an upset, I mentioned Kirk has had a couple not good games. Is there a commonality there in those 2 quote unquote not good games that maybe the Seahawks can replicate on Sunday?
Well, I think pressure. I mean, the first game was T.J. Watt, and the Saints got some pressure on him. Although, I don't know that the Saints got a ton of pressure. They just, the Falcons just missed. And Kirk talks a lot about time on task. We have got to sort of learn each other, and they feel like that was just not there at all against the Saints. Nothing would have helped against the Steelers because of T.J. Watt. But I think that if you're gonna worry Kirk, if you're gonna shake up sort of the rhythm that he's found, you've got to get pressure on him. There's no question. Forgive the background noise there.
You're okay, man. We know you're outside. It's all good. I'm curious because the wide receivers is one thing that stood out. Hell, I drafted Drake London in my fantasy team, and when I looked at some of the numbers, Drake London has been targeted on 39% of his routes from the slot. Mind you, this dude is 6'5" and 210. So what has stood out about his game so far this season?
They've been saying – they were saying all offseason, from the general manager to Raheem Morris to Zach Robinson, that they liked him in the slot. They thought he could be a big slot. They love they fell in love with the slot position, Cooper Kupp, and they're all those Rams guys are trying to find another guy who can give them that kind of Cooper Kupp production from the slot, and they thought Drake could do it. His slot snaps have basically doubled this year as opposed to the first 2 years of his career. He's running a lot more out-breaking routes. He's a really talented guy. He is not a breakaway, speed guy, but he's an excellent contested catch guy. He's got excellent hands. He is the guy among the Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, London trio. He was the guy that I was most confident was going to break out with this new system. And he really has. He had a slow week 1 like everybody else, but he has got 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games, playing with a lot of confidence. Kirk has a lot of confidence in him. So I think that, this offensive system has benefited Drake London more than anybody else. And this offensive, forgive me, I'm blanking on the word I'm looking for, philosophy, I guess. Drake London was playing about 78% of the snaps under Arthur Smith, who liked to run in lots of personnel groups, who like to, get in tons of different formations. These guys are running the Rams system. We're rolling out 11 personnel. We're running out the same dudes, and Drake's playing like 98% of the snaps. He has liked that. That has allowed him to sort of stay in his rhythm.
You mentioned the out route. Hell, he caught a game winner against, was it the Eagles on the out route? Beautiful setup play. So, yeah, that speaks to him just having outbreakers and getting open. Do you see the Falcons following the trend of keeping him busy in the slot against the Seahawks, despite Devin Witherspoon and what they got going over here with the cornerbacks and DBs?
I think so. I mean, I think that, until anybody sort of takes it away from them, they're going to try to do that. And they probably will keep trying to do that. I think it's a key part of how they want to get him involved in the game plan. They've got a ton of respect for Devin Witherspoon. Raheem Morris does, I know. And, Drake has struggled is the wrong word. Drake is challenged by elite cornerback play because he is not a guy who's going to run away from you. He's going to give you, you're going to be in position to make plays on the ball against Drake. It's just that he's sort of big boyed a lot of people this year because he is a big boy. And, so that's probably, I imagine Witherspoon, not knowing him, just watching him play, is like, this is the matchup I want. This is exactly who I want to go against because I feel like I'm the big boy in that matchup. So it should be fun.
And one thing you mentioned with Big Boy, there was, I want to say 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it was against the Giants. Was it against the Giants? Nonetheless, Devin Witherspoon is being blocked, and they run a screen to his side, and he just throws off the wide receiver and makes a play. So I'm excited to see how Drake London approach that matchup of blocking in the run game for Bijan Robinson. As you mentioned, the personnel they use sounds like Drake's going to be asked to go out there and block receiver or block DB. So I'm curious to see how that goes. Another guy that stood out to me when I was looking up some stats on the wide receiver unit is Darnell Mooney. I didn't know in 2021 he led the Chicago Bears, albeit they weren't a good team. He led them in receiving yards with 1,000 catches at 40. So he was definitely a dynamic receiver there. And then he comes to the Falcons and he's also having some success, and he's the number 2 guy. Do you see that continuing throughout the season of him being the number 2 guy behind Drake?
Yeah, I do. Kirk Cousins has got a lot of trust in him. They actually sit side by side in the locker room and have developed a pretty good relationship. Darnell's a real serious guy, and Kirk is too in terms of football. The Kirk he's got all the Kirk Chain stuff and all, but they're both sort of football nerds, and they nerd out a little bit. And Mooney is a little bit of a chops buster. He is not afraid to, get on guys in a playful way, but to make a point. And I think he and Kirk have, so far, that tension has worked well for both of them. Mooney is going to be very involved. He's shown a lot of toughness. You speak of those screens. They're gonna throw him some of those screens, and Drake is gonna have to get a hat on Witherspoon, or you could see a big play in that part of the game if they keep throwing that screen as much to Darnell as much as they have. But he's been really good for this team. He's got a chance, to get close to 1,000 yards again if he keeps up to this pace, I think.
I appreciate Zach Robinson, the OC, came from the Rams, right?
Yeah.
I got that right? Yeah. I appreciate him doing what Arthur Smith I wish did more often, was play the good players more. It seems very simple. I love the thank you for giving us the kind of rough estimate on the splits for Drake with this staff versus the previous staff. No one cares about our fantasy teams, obviously, but I just feel like the football world wants Bijan to have the ball more and running it to tight ends on the goal line last year, or whatever Arthur Smith was up there doing, cooking in his brain was just very, very frustrating. So with that in mind, putting it specifically on Bijan, who all eyes will be on this week, you'll hear questions about him from the Seahawks perspective all week because they just cannot stop the run right now. It's just really ugly. Everyone is able to run on them. Isaac Gerendo, Jordan Mason, Tyrone Tracy. I'm running off those names because that's where you get concerned. Obviously, the last time they played the Falcons, very similar. It was like, oh, you can't stop Cordell Patterson. Well, that's a problem. It's one thing you get run over by Derrick Henry. You can't stop David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. That kind of happens. But, you can't stop Cordell Patterson. You can't stop Tyrone Tracy. That's when people start, hey, do we need to start firing folks? Bijan, I guess, falls on the other side of it. He's one of them star dudes. Feels like he can take one to the house from wherever. How is he maybe being used differently, if at all, in Zach Robinson's scheme versus what the madman Arthur Smith was doing previously?
Well, he's more of a running back than a pass catcher. He has been a lot more involved as sort of a traditional running back. But I'll say this about Bijan. He is a guy who feels like he can take one to the house at any moment. But it's been a year and a half, and he hasn't. I mean, they said when they drafted him, this guy's a home run hitter, but he hasn't hit a home run yet. He's a really good player. He has had some really impressive 14-yard runs. He's had some really impressive 3-yard runs that might have been -4s. But, I'm not sure that Bijan's production matches yet the way he is talked about in the league. I'm a Tyler Algier guy. If you're the Seahawks and you can't stop the run, I'd be ready for just sort of a face full of Tyler Algier on Sunday because, you saw, if you go back and look what he did to the Panthers in the second half, and that's what this group has tried to do. I mean, that clearly seems to be that they're playing. We're going to loosen you up in the first half with Bijan and and we're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And once we feel like we've got a kind of a toehold, we've got a little bit of a grip on this game, here comes 25, and he's going to run it at your face. And that's what this offensive line feels the most comfortable with. So, yes, Bijan is dynamic and fun to watch, and just a great human being from everything that we can tell. But don't sleep on Tyler Algier. I'm not sure that he is that many steps behind Bijan in terms of value to this offense.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, it looks like Bijan's longest career run is 38 yards.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, you keep waiting for him to have one of these 60, and he's gone and out of lightning bolts, and it hasn't happened yet.
Wow, I would not. Glad you brought that up. I would not have imagined that. Although, Chris, I feel like our track record on this show is so bad that we have now jinxed the Seahawks in the wrong way. And like Bijan's first carry will go for 45.
72.
I didn't say it. Mike said it. We have definitely had shows where we say stuff like, "Oh, they should be able to do that," and the opposite happens. As to Mike's point, Bijan's probably going to run for 200 yards and have a big 80-yard run out of nowhere because poor angles and bad tackling. So we're sorry, Seahawks fans, but Mike already put it out there in the atmosphere.
Let me give you another Bijan stat that's going to surprise you. Last week was the first time in his career he's had more than one rushing touchdown in a game.
Wow.
And he had two.
He's probably going to have two again.
Maybe, but if I'm Seahawks fans, I'm worried about Tyler Algier.
Okay.
Oh man, yeah. No, I'm sorry, Seahawks fan. I'm sorry personally in advance. I know I jinxed it. Although it's partly the Seahawks' fault, Josh. The Seahawks had a little run, I think in 2022 and 2023, where people they were playing were just having career games. Yeah. It was just like career highs. I want to say like a month straight. Cordell Patterson, I believe, rushed for his career high against them. Taysom Hill looked like Cam Newton against them. TJ Hawkinson had like a bazillion touchdowns. It was like in a few weeks in a row. I'm hoping I did not just jinx them in a bad way. We shall see. Should be interesting. I do think of Bijan as a home run hitter, but you're right. Yeah, the stats have not backed that up. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's flip to the other side of the ball. For those who are watching on YouTube, you can see that I'm wearing a Washington State hat. That is not a coincidence. In our previous segment, I was not wearing a Washington State hat. Now I am, because the Falcons defensive coordinator is a familiar face to people up here in the Pacific Northwest. That would be Jimmy Lake. Obviously used to be the Huskies defensive coordinator and head coach. I prefer to remember him as the head coach because that's when we kicked his ass in the Apple Cup. Love that. Had to throw some Jimmy Lake shade in there. I always will. But just beyond the coordinator, the Falcons are a kind of funky defensive team because they have like players I like, but I'm not sure that the defense is good. Like I love Jesse Bates. I love Justin Simmons. I love AJ Terrell. I feel like that's a really like good unit. Stats kind of favor the safeties in that regard. I don't think only one running back's found the end zone against them, but otherwise seems like a pretty average unit that can't rush the passer either. So, I mean, Josh, what has this unit done? Let's start with the good. What has this unit on defense done well through 6 weeks?
Sort of held on, except for the Tampa game when they got run over a little bit against what's looking more and more like a really good offense. Is they've kept things in front of them. Their explosive play rate is among the best in the NFL, and they are clearly playing with that in mind. They are, to my mind, a terribly boring defense to watch. I mean, it is play a lot of zone, rally and tackle. And that has worked for them. And that's the plan they came into the season with, because they didn't expect this to be a dynamic group. They expected the offense to lead this team, and the defense has just got to hold on. Now, when they added Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons in August, maybe some of that changes a little bit. Maybe some of your thought process changes a little bit, but they still play like they are just there to keep everything under control and not necessarily there to make a ton of dynamic plays. You're right that Jesse Bates is elite. Jesse Bates, probably belongs somewhere in the deep defensive player of the year conversation. He is that good. Justin Simmons is a really good player. Probably his numbers, his times are a little down. His speed is a little down from where it was at the peak of his career, which maybe takes him out of the elite player conversation these days, but a really good player. AJ Terrell had his first interception in 3 years last week, so maybe that jump starts him. Defensive line, Grady Jarrett's playing really well, but you're right, they can't rush the passer. I pulled up the stats here so I could sound. Let's see, 28th in the league in pressure rate, and against the run they are 29th in the league in defensive running success rate. So if you're content to just run the ball, take short gains in the passing game, you can move the ball to the red zone against this crew without a ton of trouble. And then it's just a matter of, can you score touchdowns or field goals? It's not terribly exciting, but it is a formula that has worked so far for Atlanta. So I would imagine that they would keep it up.
Oh, Josh, yeah, that is music to our listeners' ears, right? Seahawks are having an identity crisis on offense right now. They have this really explosive home run hitter and Ken Walker, and just don't love them. I don't know. Don't give them the ball. Maybe it's a new OC thing. Ryan Grubb, their OC, came from the University of Washington. The number, that jumped out to me when I was watching the film too, and just looking up some numbers. I was like, that sack rate can't be right. That's got to be a typo. Maybe I filtered it wrong. 2.6%. Holy hell, only 5 sacks. Good Lord. I guess I'm going to give the Seahawks fans some hope here. If there is a spot for the Seahawks to succeed, I know they might not want to hear it based on what we've seen recently, but is it perhaps putting the ball in Geno's hand because the Falcons are probably going to let him be clean while he's back there?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm the Falcons fan, so if you're just reversing that conversation, I'm terribly worried about Geno the way we have seen him play of late, that if he doesn't have any concern about the pass rush, and he's got DK and Tyler, Smith and Jig, got all those guys out there, that it could be a long day for me. And I think that the Falcons will worry about that too, which is why you will see them play that style of defense that they have played all season long. They will do everything in their power not to give up a 60-yard touchdown pass. And if that means giving up a bunch of 8s and then 12s, they're just going to have to live with that. But you could, again, it could also be a big Kenneth Walker game, because this group has not stopped the run terribly well. And I agree with you that Kenneth Walker is dynamic. So if Seahawks come out of here still, struggling offensively, regardless of the result, if they can't at least move the ball some, that I would imagine increases the angst in Seattle.
Oh, you don't have to imagine there. It'll get bad up. You know how primetime games go. You've had a few already. It just magnifies in either direction. Like it's the joy or the despair. It's just magnified when you win or lose in primetime. The Seahawks, during this 3-game losing streak, 2 of those losses have come in primetime, a Monday and a Thursday. So that it's all magnified right now. If they go down to Atlanta, this game is like 10 a.m. Seattle time, but that doesn't matter because it would be a 4th straight loss. The offense would be funky. No, heads would get to starting to roll here, but I'm gonna try to keep a positive note. That's my theme of the show, at least this version of the show. Today, Chris, it is prediction time. We ready?
Yes, we are. So we skipped last week in the prediction because it was a Thursday night game, very short week. Mike and I were like, we don't have time. There's just too much going on. So with that being said, the reporters' win-loss record is 3-2 straight up. 2-3 against the spread. So we'll go to the previous week. So 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, Dan picked the Seahawks to win 27-17 against the Giants. Everybody was surprised there because the Giants ended up coming into Seattle and winning on Monday Night Football 29-20. Reporters are now 3-3 on the over and under as well. So with that being said, we'll start things off with over and under. We'll go with Bijan Robinson. Over under 99.5 scrimmage yards.
Under. Yeah, I don't have to hesitate on that. I'm not saying he couldn't get that. He absolutely could. But they do spread the ball around a ton. I have made clear how I feel about Tyler Algier, and especially if Atlanta's in an advantageous second half position, what that might look like. So under.
All right. And now it's time for the game prediction.
Hold on. Can I sneak in, Chris, the second one I was thinking of?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like Kyle Pitts has kind of been trapped a little bit in the last couple seasons in terms of his production as well, and I feel bad for him. So I was looking up some stats, and this won't surprise Seahawk fans, but they're allowing the fourth most receiving yards to tight ends this season. I'm sure you guys can feel that in real time. Well, there's a stat to back up what you've been seeing. So let's do a bonus over-under in the name of the homie Kyle Pitts. Over-under 57 and a half receiving yards for Kyle Pitts against the Seahawks on Sunday.
I'm going to go under because of Kyle Pitts' sort of roller coaster season. He is on a streak of 2 back-to-back games with more than 55 receiving yards, which is the first time he's done that since his rookie year. So I'm not going to predict a third straight because it's rare that we've gotten to 2. So I'm just going to play the math and say under.
Fair enough. And
All
last
right.
but not least, game prediction. We mentioned that off the air that the Seahawks are underdogs and the Falcons are favored at 2.5. So who you got to win this game, and give us a score, Josh?
I am notoriously terrible at predicting these games. And I think the whole world is, if we're being honest. I mean, sports, there are very few people who make a living betting on NFL games. I'm just going to play the math, and I'm going to take the Seahawks 31-27. And this is my sort of in-depth analytical breakdown. It's hard for me to imagine the Seahawks losing 4 straight, and it's hard for me to imagine, frankly, the Falcons winning 4 straight. This is the NFL. How often do those types of things happen? So just give me math and give me the Seahawks.
I will say, though, it's a new head coach, so that could happen. They could get, oh my gosh, they lost 4 straight. But I hear your point. I looked it up too. I said, damn, could the Falcons really win 4 straight?
Feels weird to Atlanta fans too.
I like that. We need to get that on a shirt. Give me math and give me the Seahawks. I like that. Oh man, we gotta work that.
I don't understand it, but I can't argue with it.
Hey, I like that. That's a good way to close it out. Josh, and thank you. Chris got the prediction written down, so you're held to it.
All right.
Good luck to you on that. We'll give you the floor for the end of the show. If anything you want to plug, pods, stories, comment, anything, even if it's just your social media or Seahawks fans may be interested in following you this week, go ahead and toss anything out there. Floor is yours.
I wrote about, speaking of Drake London and his usage, I wrote about that last week or 2 weeks ago if you want to find that one. I think I'm going to write about Jesse Bates this week and how realistic is it in this day and age for a safety to actually be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. No safety hadn't won it since Troy Polamalu, I think, in 2010. Almost haven't. I think Earl may have been the last one to finish in the top 5. And I don't know the year. He was 3rd one year. I don't know the year off the top of my head, but it's the safeties are losing out on that conversation. They're just not in that conversation anymore. And I wonder if Jesse Bates could. I don't think he'll win the award in a world where T.J. Watt exists, but could he at least get safeties back into the conversation?
Earl Thomas was 3rd in 2013. The Seahawks.
Okay. He may be the last
Super Bowl season,
and he may be the last guy to finish in the top 5, or maybe.
Oh,
I think that's right. Don't hold me to that.
Oh, that one we will not hold you to. That's okay. Only your prediction we will hold you to on this show. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Josh Kendall. Does a great job covering the Falcons for The Athletic. Make sure you guys check out his stuff all year, but in particular this week as the Seahawks get ready to play the Falcons. Thank you guys for tapping into the Seahawks Man to Man podcast. Make sure you're listening and watching, subscribing on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Apple, Blue Wire Pods. Shout out to the new company. Make sure you're following Josh, reading his work. Chris, we're done, right?
We are all set. We appreciate all the love and support. We'll come back to you with standout plays from the game against the Niners this week, late Friday, and then we'll talk to you post-game after. According to Josh, the Seahawks prevail 31-27, knocking off the Falcons, making things quite interesting in the NFC. Thanks again for all the love and support. We'll talk to you guys later.